And good morning, and welcome to Live from the Heartland. I'm Lisa Smith. You can come down to the Heartland and enjoy the show here at the corner of Glenwood and Lunt, or if you missed the show or just want to see what our guests look like, you can go to YouTube and search for Heartland Media. Also, you can get the show over your computer. But today it's a beautiful day, and our first guest is Deneene Florino. Deneene is an author, grief and transition counselor, and also established the Angel Tales Foundation. It looks under your information, Deneene, it looks like you've got 3 degrees, and it says you studied with Kubler-Ross. Really? The Kubler-Ross?
Really, really, Lisa.
Wow. She's dead, right?
She is.
She's. I bet she took it really well. Sorry. Okay, that was bad.
She didn't take it very well
She
at all.
didn't take it well?
No, her death process was very anguished.
But she's the one that came up with the stages of denial, anger.
She is, but she had a stroke, and she felt that because of all of her hard work that she should have been taken and spared a long and terrible illness.
But she had a long and terrible illness.
Yeah, she did. The end years were pretty rough for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that was meant to be a joke, and now I feel badly. Anyway, Deneene, thank you very much for being on the show today. Glad you could make it. You are you help people deal with grief and sort of transition through sort of life's traumas. But now, how is what you do different from, say, geriatric managers and consultants that help older people who have come upon a disabling illness or are on their way out, so to speak?
Well, my background comes from hospice. I did hospice for over 10 years, and I really kind of specialize in the grief field. So when I'm talking about grief, it's parents, families who are left after somebody dies. Of course, the transitional part, I can help people from the time that they're diagnosed with a terminal illness as cancer through that time until they pass and help them through that transition. But mostly at the moment, I have been focusing on the grief aspect and working with family members and loved ones after.
So what exactly can you do to help someone? I mean, for instance, what might you do? Say somebody lost a child in gang violence, say a drive-by shooting. How would you help that person deal with that?
Homicide is incredibly difficult, as is all deaths, but those are very, very difficult. They need a lot of therapy. They need a lot of time. They need a lot of reassurance that the things that they're feeling, the anger that they're feeling, the revenge, whatever it is a really normal process. And they need to understand that there's venues that are very therapeutic where they can help resolve those issues. And then constantly it's education, educating people and letting them know that where they are is okay and where they can be, and giving them hope to knowing that these feelings will subside. They may not completely subside, but they'll be able to maybe put them into a better perspective.
Now, earlier I asked you if you were religious, because that's going to lead into my next question, and you said no, that you are more of a Buddhist. Now, does that ever interfere with your counseling of people, like, say, somebody who's Baptist or Catholic or what have you?
Well, Lisa, that's a great question. And my own feelings, my own beliefs really have nothing to do with the person that I'm talking to, because it's their belief system. And you talk to them about their belief structure, and you ask them how they feel about things, and you kind of go from there. So the way that I feel really only affects myself and nobody else.
So do you draw on, what other sort of techniques do you draw on when you're helping people deal with grief? For instance, I mean, I think you mentioned visualization.
There's a lot of great things. If you take parents who have lost children, especially like, let's say, someone who's only had one child, and they've been a mother for 22 years, and their child dies, let's say, of leukemia. Who are they now? That's a huge question for these people. Who am I now? Because they were a mother.
So their identity was...
Absolutely. Their identity was kind of taken away from them. So what you can do is you can, through meditation and visualization, help them see who they can become. It may be a long road, it may be a long journey, but that's one of the techniques that they can do, because they have to reinvent themselves, so to speak. There's a real big cliche that when a child dies, a family has to make a new phone book because they lose so many of the people in their lives that they once counted on. And so they actually...
How do they lose them? I don't understand.
When parents lose a child, they need to tell that story over and over and over again. And there's a thing, some people want them to move on quicker. Some people cannot stand to see them in so much pain for so long that they kind of distance themselves. I mean, the anguish that you see in a parent's eyes after they lost a child and you're close with them, it's difficult to see them like that. You want them to move on. And so they'll be like, it's been a year. Well, in grief time, every year is like 1 month. So when I'm talking to someone who maybe is trying to understand the process a loved one's going through that have lost a child, I'll say, how many years has it been? They'll say, wow, it's been 5 years. You know, they should be getting on by now. They should be moving on. And I said, well, if you think about it, it's like 5 months. So every year is like a month. Think about the rawness of it only being 5 months.
So the emotional reality is totally different.
Completely different.
Now, I saw from your website that you speak at a lot of conferences. Compassionate Friends, I believe, is the organization. That's one.
Yeah, the Compassionate Friends is a worldwide organization that is incredible and fabulous, and it is based on people who have lost children. And it's for siblings, and it's for parents, and it's run by people who have lost children, so they know what they're going through. And they have workshops. They have international workshops and national workshops. There's one coming up, I believe it's in July or the beginning of August. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. this year, but there could be 4,000 to 5,000 people there. And
that's a lot of grieving people.
And those are just the ones coming to the workshop. So the really neat thing, and neat may not be actually the greatest word to use here, but let's say your child dies of suicide. You can go to workshops all weekend long that just deal with suicide and meet people from all over the nation. Some people fly in internationally for these events, and you can talk about it. And each workshop has a different kind of a view or a slant to it so that you can kind of go through those things so that you're with people now from all over. And now with the web and with all this stuff, you can stay in touch with these people. So it actually helps you get a support system that just has to do with the exact thing that you're dealing with, the exact grief. Because there's homicide. There's people whose children are on ventilators that they have to unplug those. There's suicide. There's, long-term illness. There's vehicular accidents are the greatest thing to take our children. There's more children killed in car accidents than anything else. So there's a lot of different categories and classes, and with those comes with a lot of other stuff.
How, just to digress just a moment, but not too much, how did you get into this? Like, how were you drawn into this? Did you have a personal...
I did. When I was 16, 17, and 18, I lost 3 people that were very, very close to me. The first was my grandfather. I watched him suffer from stomach cancer. And at that time, there really was no hospice. And I remember watching him writhing in pain, saying, "Please let me die." And I was in the back of the room, and I remember saying, "There's got to be a better way." When I was 17, my best and dearest friend committed suicide. And I had known her since I was a baby. We grew up together. And that was a different kind of death. And then the third was my aunt, who was actually kind of my refuge for the first 2 deaths, died suddenly of a heart attack. So I went through a long-term illness. I went through a suicide. And then I went through a sudden death in 3 years. And it turned my world around.
So basically, you found that this was a calling, that you needed to pay attention to this instead of just ignore it and move on.
Yeah.
And now you were 16 when this series started. So
I was.
So that's pretty early to get your calling.